So a few days ago I shared a video about how I got 6 free Inktense pencils, and it's a special offer which Derwent are running in the UK until the 19th of June 2023. So if you are in the UK and you're watching this video before that date, it's worth taking a look. The offer is that you get the pencils free with any purchase from their website. Anyway, in that video I did it in a bit of a rush because I was getting ready to go out, so I only had time to just do a straightforward colour swatch, and then I couldn't help myself but to just blend each colour up into the one above it. And I said I'd come back at a later date and do a bit more experimenting with the colours. And I've done a little bit of preparation. I kind of folded this piece of paper into like a trifold leaflet, and I spent a bit of time doing some preparation of different things I want to try out. So let's see how many colours we can make just with this limited set. I'm guessing when it comes to using these in the real world for actual sketching, I will probably want to add a brown. But apart from that, at the moment I don't really know what other colours I would want to add. But obviously, you know, as I'm using them, and then I might think, oh, I could really do with this colour or that colour, and then I might just add a few extras. But it's not my intention to go out and buy a big set of the full range of colours. I want to kind of keep it as limited as possible and just do what I can with the colours that I've got. So let's see how it goes with mixing from just these few basic colours. Okay, so as I mentioned, I already just did the basic colours just with the pencils directly onto the paper, and then used water to blend them out. This smear here, I did it later because one of the things which is said about the Inktense pencils is once it's dry, it then becomes permanent, which means you can build up the colour in layers, also means that you can use it on fabric. But one of the videos that I watched where somebody was showing different things that you can do with the pencils, she mentioned that it's only permanent if all of the pigment has been activated by water. So here you can see when I tested it just by scribbling on with the colour, you can see some of the pencil marks still. So I just tested it here just to see if it would do it, and obviously because some of the original pigment was still down on the paper that hadn't been activated with the water, it then will reactivate at a later date and will smudge. So that's just something to bear in mind, that if you want to use it in those layers take advantage of that permanent feature of it, you have to make sure that all of your original pigment has been activated by the water. Okay, so first of all we've got sun yellow. Not quite sure how wet the brush should be for this. I don't know how quickly the colour will come off. Maybe I need a little more than that. Okay. So that gives you quite a watery, sort of the watercolour look without needing a separate palette to mix. Okay, so that's the basic colours taken direct from the pencils. It was recommended in the video that I saw where they were doing this that you dry the pencil tips off before you move on to doing something different, but because I'm also going to do the flicking technique, I thought, well, I don't need to dry them off just yet because I'm going to be using wet still. But what I will do is I will kind of mask this off a little bit because I don't want to get flicks everywhere. Okay, so I've masked off just with plain printer paper around, so hopefully I won't get it all over my desk as well. And I've got some tissue handy ready for wiping off the pencils after I'm done. So here we go, my first flicking. Now I've got quite a bit of water in the brush. Let's see. Oh yeah, that's quite fun. But that's quite a dense cluster of very tiny flicks. Let's try with less water on the red and see if it makes a difference to how it flicks. Maybe slightly more defined, although like an even tinier. Okay, let's try from a different angle, higher with the blue. Oh yeah, much wider spatter pattern, and perhaps a few bigger splotches, although the bigger ones are off the edgelet, which I've masked. I wonder if the splatter technique is one that you can develop a skill for kind of knowing where things are gonna splash. Well, that's quite nice. I quite like the green. And the violet. I'll just do a little bit of the black because I don't want it to take over. There we go. So that was quite fun doing the flicking, and you do kind of lose quite a bit of colour because obviously once the end is wet and it kind of starts going a bit soft, I suppose, and then it's quite a lot wipes off when you dry it. So my plan is that I'm going to do all of the rows first, and then afterwards I will do all of the columns, like the red and the yellow. So this one will have the red on top and this one will have the yellow on top, and we'll just see if there's any difference. And obviously the ones which are in the bold squares, that's just going to be the yellow, the red and the blue, just the straightforward colours. Okay, so that's all the rows done, and when I come back to doing the colours on top, obviously some of these are colours that you wouldn't normally mix together, so I'm expecting there's going to be a lot of nasty muddy colours, and especially when it comes to the black and probably the violet, because they're such bold colours, the other colours are probably going to be overwhelmed, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so that's all the dry colour on. Let's see what happens when we put some water on. Okay, at this halfway point I think it's time I need to go and get some clean water, but there are actually some subtle differences. So like for example the red and the yellow, I was actually expecting that this one, which has got the red on top, would be bolder than this one that had the red underneath. So that was a surprise. But of course it might all look different once it's dry anyway, but let me go and change my water. Okay, let's carry on. Okay, so that's all our colours. So that's every colour mixed with every colour. I wouldn't want to do this if I had a set of 72. but for 6 it's okay. And there are some nice sort of brighter colours in this end, and then obviously you've got like the real darks, and there are a few kind of murky colours in there as well, which are a little bit not so nice. But I guess even if I decided not to buy a brown, I mean, some of these kind of murkier colours could pass as a brown at a push, couldn't they? Right, I'm going to leave that to dry, and I'm going to go and get some lunch. I'm actually going out this afternoon, so I'm not sure if I'll have time to come back and do the insides today. I might be back tomorrow to finish that off. Okay, so I've covered over this side just to hopefully avoid any mishaps. And what I'm going to be doing here is I'm just going to be drawing the colour directly onto the paper, and the different size of the blocks here just depends how many colours I'm going to be blending together, or how many parts of colours I'm going to be blending together. I'll explain as I go. So this left hand side, I'm just going to be using the 3 primary colours. So for example, when we get to the green, I'm not going to use the green pencil, I'm going to use the yellow and blue. And again with the violet, I'm not going to use the violet pencil, I'm going to use the red and the blue. But then because I have got green and violet pencils, I've also got these sections here where I will use those extra ones, but you'll see that as I go. Okay, so let's crack on. Okay, so we just start with a nice simple primary yellow, sun yellow in this case. In fact, I think I'll start with all the just do the straightforward primaries first. Oh, it looks like a Mondrian painting. Okay, so next I think what I'll do is I'll go back and do the secondary. So we'll do primary, secondary, and then tertiary. Is that the way you pronounce it? I never quite know how to pronounce the third one. Okay, so sorry, my pencils are rolling about all over the place. Okay, so the orange, I'm going to try and do roughly equal parts of the yellow and the red. And obviously you can adjust what type of orange you're getting by whether you do more red or more yellow, or and if you've got multiple reds or multiple yellows in the sets that you've got, then you can play with it even further. Oh, sorry, that's my chair creaking, honest. Okay, and then we just blend those together as best we can. Okay, so that's a pretty good orange, I think. And then our next secondary colour is violet, which is going to be red and blue. So again, I'm going to try and do roughly half and half. Okay, this time I think I'll try just a back and forth technique, just try and blend across and back rather than stirring it like I did on the previous one. No, I think we need to do a little bit more of a stir in the middle. I guess in reality, like, you're probably not going to be colouring kind of blocks next to each other like this. You would perhaps do a line of red, a line of blue, or just kind of overlap them a little bit more. That's actually quite a murky kind of colour really, but it's fairly recognisable as a purple, I suppose. And then our final secondary colour is green, which is going to be yellow and blue. And obviously how hard you press with the pencils is going to have a difference as well. That's a nice green, I think. Okay, so now then let's think about our tertiary colours, if that's how it's pronounced. I think that's right. So we've got yellow orange. So we're going to have yellow and red for the orange, but then we want extra yellow. So I think what I will do is put the red in the middle. This is what I was meaning about parts of colours. So it's only actually 2 colours, but it's 2 parts yellow to 1 part red. And again, you can adjust this by how much red or how much yellow. Trying to blend out that red bit in the middle. You can still see where the red was. But it gives you an idea that it's more yellowy than the straightforward orange. Okay, and then we've got the opposite on this one because we've got red orange. So on this one we're going to have 2 parts red to 1 part yellow. And again, you can still see where the red was. It's not kind of fully bled into the yellow. Okay, so red violet. So we had red and blue for the violet. So for red violet we want 2 parts red to 1 part blue. Mixing it this way side by side, especially when it's 3 colours or 3 parts of colours like this, it feels, this is a definite, when they talk about don't overwork the paint, I think this is what they mean. Okay, that one's not so successful. Can definitely see the red and the blue blocks still, but with a different pattern of how I laid the colour down, it would probably work better than that. Okay, and then we've got this one here with the blue violet. So again, the opposite of what we did before. So this time we do 2 parts blue to 1 part red. Obviously there are probably much better ways to do this, but I was trying to do it as equally as possible to kind of, for colour proportions. So, but it's just for an example of what can be done. So although these 3 colours are all a bit murky, you can definitely see that this is sort of the redder end and the bluer end of that violet scale. Not that you could really call that violet. It's like the redder and the bluer end of murky. Okay, blue-green. So again, we had yellow and blue for the green, but for blue-green we want 2 parts blue to 1 part yellow. Greens definitely mix nicer than the purples, but I think that's normal, isn't it, for all kind of paints. It's always harder to mix a purple than it is to mix a green. And then the last one using just our primaries is yellow green. So this time we've got 2 parts yellow to 1 part blue. And again, it's not ideal because you can see where the original colour blocks were. They've not completely merged, but it definitely is from the bluer to the yellower end of the greens. Okay, so that was all just with the primaries. But then of course this set that I've got does have a green and a violet. So let's do some nicer violets. So we start off with the straightforward violet. Oh, that's much nicer, isn't it? No wonder they've included the violet pencil and not expect you to just do it all with red and blue. Okay, and then with the red violet, so obviously we've got 1 part violet, just using that additional pencil, and the red. My table's obviously not level, my pencils keep rolling away. Okay, and then we've got blue violet. Oh, let's do the violet first, the same as I did on the one above. Well, that's nice, I like that colour. Okay, so these are obviously better colours than these, being able to mix just with 2 rather than 3, or even the red and blue. So it's nice having those pencils, but obviously with some practice of the ratios you probably could get a better purple with the red and the red and the blue. Okay, and then we'll do the same again down here with the green, because we've got extra green pencil in this set. It's definitely a much brighter green than the greens you get when you mix it yourself. So I think it's the greens are more practical, so if you're doing a scene which, you know, has got greenery in it, then it's quite nice that you can use the direct green, or you can use the, you know, mix yourself green. And then for the blue green, obviously we've got green and blue. And then we've got yellow green. Obviously green with extra yellow. There we go, so that's our colours mixed side by side using the pencils, so just using the primaries and then adding in the extra 2 colours. Obviously I've not used black on any of those, but I guess you could add a tiny amount of black to get different shades of those colours as well. So for this colour wheel I'm actually going to be doing quite a different process, but looking at the same colours which we tried to create here. And again I'm going to be focusing on just using the 3 primary colours in this main centre area like we did here, and then these extra segments outside the main circle will be the ones using the additional green and violet, same as we did here. But it's not going to be a direct duplication of what we did, because this one I'm actually going to do it where you mix the colours on a palette and then paint it on, rather than putting it on directly with the pencils. And I've seen a few people doing this, and they had a Caran d'Ache palette, so it's like a plastic palette which apparently is smooth on one side and rough on the other, so you can rub off the pencils on the rough side. Well, I'm not prepared to go and buy a palette just for doing that, because the reason I've got these pencils is with the idea of having it in my travel kit, and I don't want to be taking an extra palette with me and creating watercolour on a palette to then paint, because if I was going to do that when I was out and about, I would just use my watercolour palette. But it's going to be interesting to see how it works, and it's something that perhaps I would choose to use in certain circumstances, but probably not when I'm out and about. It would be something that I would do when I was at home, where I can have it set up on the desk and take a bit more time and make a bit more mess. Okay, so as I said, I've not got the Caran d'Ache rough plastic palette, so I was looking around my house for some plastic items which might have a little bit of texture, and the best thing that I can find is these plastic covers from an old notebook, which have got a little bit of a texture. It's not really rough, it's more of just like a frosted plastic, but can you hear there is a little bit of texture to it. It's not like a very smooth plastic. So I'm going to give this a go and see if it works. Okay, so again, let's start with the primary colours. So I'll start with the yellow, and we just scribble some yellow onto the plastic. Sorry if I'm wobbling the camera while I'm doing this. Well, that works nicely. Really is just like painting with watercolour. And then the interior segments, I was planning to just water the colour down a bit, so we'll just add some water to that. Oh, I perhaps added a bit more water than I intended, but I need to do it again for the little one. That's too wet. Okay, and let's do the red. And then, because I could use those colours for mixing the in-between colours, but because I've watered it down so far, I don't really want to use that because that's not going to give us a fair reflection, so I'm just going to wipe those off. Okay, so yeah, let's do our orange. I'm going to try just adding water just to one corner of it, so I can hopefully then use the same orange for the other segments. So then to this orange I want to add, so I'm going to add some extra yellow on this side. And some extra red on this side, and hopefully I can just use the same orange middle to mix those two. So we'll just mix that in a little bit at the top for our yellow orange. These colours are working out really nicely. Mixing them on the palette, you get like a really nice variety of colour. Well, we'll see when we get round to the violet how it works. So that's looking good so far. Actually, I think we'll do the greens first, because if I do this first, I'm likely to smudge that while I'm doing the greens. So our green, using the primaries. And then we'll be adding our yellow green, so we just add some extra yellow at the top. And our blue green, so we'll add some extra blue at the bottom. I'm really liking how this colour wheel's looking. I'm so sorry, I didn't realise until after I'd finished that my memory card was actually full, but you got most of the colours and obviously you saw how I was doing it. So I just finished off with the blue-green and then the violets, just using the red and blue, and then I went back in with the extra pencils with the green and the violet, the same as I did on these over here. So just to get those extra ones, which are just kind of, you know, more variations, just using those extra pencils. So that's my experiments complete for today. So here's my little leaflet of a few options. So we had just drawing the pencil directly onto the paper with no mixing, although obviously I did mix a little bit towards the end. And then we had using the colour straight from the tip of the pencil with a wet brush, using a wet brush to flick colour off the pencil tip, and then inside we had colours mixed on top of each other and colours mixed side by side. This one was kind of all the colours mixed with all the colours, whereas this one focused on the trying to recreate the colours on a colour wheel, just using the primary and then the extras, and then the same on the actual colour wheel, just using the primaries and then the extras. So in terms of the colour mixing, obviously the most successful way to mix the colours was to do it on a separate palette and then paint it on, which I think gives a really nice effect. But like I said, I'm not likely to use this so much, because if I want to paint it on like watercolour, then I can just use watercolour. But maybe there are some situations where I will use that. But yeah, overall I'm really happy with the amount of colours I've been able to produce just with the very limited palette, just the 6 colours, or in most cases was just either the 3 or the 5 colours, and then obviously black is you know, not going to use that so much for the mixing. But yeah, I hope you found that interesting. And then of course for me the next step is to actually do some pictures using these pencils, and try out a few techniques in a real piece of artwork. So maybe I'll show that in a future video, or maybe you'll just see that at a later date when I'm doing a flip through of my sketchbooks. So either way, I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful, and I hope to see you next time.